In May of 2022, Elon Musk announced that he would no longer support the Democrat Party, citing them as having become the party of division and hate. The richest man in the world would go on to purchase Twitter and invest over $290 million into the 2024 election to get Donald Trump and Republican candidates elected. These two acts alone likely changed the course of the right-wing movement here in America forever. After the elections, he then left his businesses to work on cutting wasteful spending in the government via the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which went on to cost Elon's companies millions in boycotts, arson, and negative press. Tesla alone has lost about $100 billion since these endeavors. But that honeymoon period is now over. Fed up with the proposed deficit increases and perceived snubs of Tesla and Starlink in the massive spending bill working its way through Congress, Elon Musk began to lash out at the bill and those Republicans who supported it. Never one to let an insult slide, Donald Trump quickly became critical of Elon and his subsidies, and it devolved rapidly from there. Now, two of the most important individuals in the world are at bitter odds with one another. Elon accused Trump of appearing in the Epstein files. Trump fired back that Elon is a ketamine addict who should go back to Africa. No one can chart a path through the ticking time bombs of out-of-control spending, mass immigration, and trying to fund a government that currently spends over $200,000 per second. This episode is brought to you by our premier sponsors, Armored Republic and Reece Fund, as well as our Patreon members and our faithful donors. You can join our Patreon by going to patreon.com/Right Response Ministries, or you can donate by going to rightresponseministries.com/donate. We very well may be in the final stages of our republic. Tune in now as we discuss. The final stages of our republic. Anakin, insert Anakin face.
Right.
Right, but not the final stages of the new monarchy that will come and replace it.
We got 250 years of a good republic, and that's about how long people should be in charge before you realize, wait a second, we don't want these people in charge.
Remember the video? It's some Muslim imam or something. He's like, democracy is government for the people, by the people, of the people. And he's like, but the people are retarded. And so democracy is it's a government by the retarded, for the retarded. Things are so hot right now. The romance between Trump and Elon has come to a bitter end. I've kind of oscillated back and forth earlier on this issue with the big beautiful bill. But honestly, I've gotten to the point where, and we'll talk about this today. I'm going to give it to Wes here in just a moment, but I think you just got to pass it. I think at the end of the day, when I think of America's solvency, I don't just think of economics, which matter, but it's the people. Like, we have to be like, the solution is it's the people of our country. We have to be able to deport millions of people. Yep. That is, in large part, that's a big part of the problem. And the debt crisis and all these kinds of things, believe it or not, I know it feels impossible, but it actually can be sorted out by innovation and producing more if we can bring industry home. But the big problem, as I see it, is the idea of globalism, and that we're just importing the world and exporting all of our manufacturing and industry and these kinds of things. And if we could solve that, then I really think that that the debt would follow. I don't think it's going to be, let's solve the debt problem, and then one day we'll stop the invasion into our country. Right. It's no, let's actually care about the American people, and to do that, the first thing you have to do is answer the question, what is an American? Yeah. We can't even answer that question. So if the passing of this bill in any way is hindering Trump from making good on his promises of mass deportations, then I say pass the bill.
Yep.
Well, before we jump into Wes and to just go off what you said there, Joel, there maybe is a silver lining here, because I heard even Senator Johnson from Wisconsin, who is completely opposed to the bill, even he said, look, we're not going to default on our debt. We'll pay our debt before we pay anything else. So maybe the way we actually cut entitlement spending is we get so much that we have to pay on our debt that we have nothing left for the entitlement spending. Maybe this is 7D chess that we're playing here.
We get so much in debt that we pay it with congressmen's salaries.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
That'd be great.
Let me frame out the foundation for why is it just even one big, beautiful bill? Why that framing? Presidents typically have, unless you're Barack Obama, but even then, the 2010, the Tea Party kind of wave, most presidents, they'll get in, and if they take the House and the Senate, they're going to get kind of one big piece of legislation. So with Joe Biden, this was the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. That's basically about all you're going to get before the midterms. What typically happens is, I mean, obviously the presidency, 4 years, senators, 4 years, but it's kind of staggered. Those houses, those chambers, they're just resistant to change. You can't come in and replace the president except for every 4 years. And so people could be as mad as possible, but unless he does a Watergate or unless he does a Bill Clinton, practically speaking, he's not going to get taken out of office. But the chamber that really can be influenced and through which the people have a voice more quickly is the House of Representatives, where there's just more representatives, 438, I believe, and you could elect out, you could get out of office 10, 15, and quickly change the balance, and then all bills and legislation, not executive orders, but legislation, because it has to pass through the House, you could then go ahead and bar up the president for the second half of his term.
And it's every 2 years.
And it's every 2 years. Yep. So this election is every 2 years. Yep. And this is exactly what happened and kind of saved us with Joe Biden. So they had the Senate and they had the House and they obviously had the presidency. They passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And really, I mean, that was it.
Right.
Those were the pieces he got for his presidency and what he had to campaign on. Right. So this is Trump's. It's very likely in 2026 that in the midterms, the Democrats will take back the House. We have like a 2 or 3 seat majority. We have a very slim majority. Democrats, whoever's in office, they're always unpopular, right? Grass is greener on the other side. Right. You have the Democrats in office and Republicans and everyone in the middle are like, get these guys out, they're terrible. Republicans come in, get these guys out, they're terrible. For the record, I agree with both of them. Both sides are terrible. So this is basically Trump's one chance. And one of the difficulties that we're up against, I already see some frequent commenters, some great guys saying, I hate this bill. Some of you guys, you're probably in the middle. Joel, you just said, I think we should pass it. Here's the dynamic that won me over. Because initially, and we'll get into Elon Musk's criticisms, initially I was pretty critical of it too. I said, this adds, it depends on how all of it plays out. It adds 2.4 to about 3.8 trillion to our deficit. Now, that's not the entirety that you would add across those 10 years. Right. That's on top of the deficit that the full budget itself is already running. So the budget itself is running a deficit. We had a continuing resolution for that. That goes until September 30th, at which point we either continue the spending at the current level, we pass a new bill. That doesn't seem very likely. So you have all of the deficit that's building up there. I think it's about 2 trillion a year. So we're all these in 30 trillion some in debt. 37. We're adding 2 trillion annually just through a regular budget.
Yeah, and this would bring us to like 40 trillion in debt.
This would bring us about 40 trillion. And this bill would add another 2.4 to 3.8 trillion dollars in the deficit. That's not in spending, that's in just deficit. Yep. Because what it does is it actually does a lot of tax cuts. So when you cut taxes, which is good for us, you also get less money for the greedy government to play around with. Right. So this is basically Trump's shot at enacting his legislative agenda, and a huge part of this, and almost the single issue why you were just talking about, Joel, at some level, I think there's something in it to support, is that this would provide the funds for the mass deportations that President Trump campaigned on. The president cannot just pick up his pen and give billions and billions of dollars and print them to give them to ICE to expand their budget, to expand their officers, and to carry out these operations. Right. That just simply can't be done. Practically speaking, there are limits. And in this current system, the only way we get this practical outcome is going to be it funded through a measure of Congress. Right. I want to play this video. This is Stephen Miller. He came on to Charlie Kirk's show, which this is probably the first time you're going to hear a Charlie Kirk clip. But he had a really good explanation of why this is so important right now. So we'll go ahead. We'll play, Nate. This is that second video I sent you.
That's what brings us to this moment. I have waited my entire life, and if I was older, I would say I've been waiting for 100 years, because there's never been a bill like this bill since there has been a conservative movement. This represents the culmination, in the case of the MAGA movement, of 10 years of hard work. This bill would have been unthinkable in 2017, in the Paul Ryan era. In this bill is the codification of President Trump's most important campaign promises. It is done through a process known as reconciliation, which allows us to enact them into law with 50 votes, not 60. No Democrats are involved. There's no trading with Democrats. No Democrats are involved in the writing or crafting of this bill, nor is it written by the Appropriations Committee. This bill is written by the most conservative lawmakers in Congress, people like Jim Jordan. It's written out of the policy-making committees by the Republican members there. So, for example, as has been much discussed, it fully funds the deportation agenda. It fully funds massive expansions in the number of ICE deportation officers, ICE beds, ICE deportation flights, and the complete permanent physical sealing of the entire southwest border. All of that money, all of that funding is provided up front. This was a 10-year plan. In other words, going back to 2017, when Paul Ryan didn't give us the money for the immigration project, for 10 years, we thought, given the chance to do it again, we would put all of the immigration money in the first bill out of the chute up front. That's what this bill does.
I love Stephen Miller.
Me too. I was going to say, because there have been plenty of times where it's somebody that we do not love, and we will point out, the Wikipedia early life, and say, like, all right, this person is Jewish. I'm going to go on record publicly. Stephen Miller is a Jew, and I love him.
He's literally dedicated his life. His emails leaked from Breitbart. It was like 2018 or so. All they found was hundreds of emails of him emailing practically everybody he knew all these updated crime statistics about illegal immigrants. Right. Like again and again, did you see this? Did you see that? Like literally, there's one point where he's like, I don't have a life. I don't have a family. This is everything I do. And he's married now at this point. But so that's Stephen Miller, one of the most influential men in the Trump administration. And everyone's saying, hey, AI, hey, the pork spending, hey, we don't cut the deficit enough. And Stephen Miller would probably agree with you. But he's saying, listen to me. We've got a once in a lifetime chance.
That's huge.
To fund with billions and billions of dollars. He says later on in the interview, ICE has not seen its budget expanded since the Obama era.
Wow.
So your budget for your deportations, your budget for enforcement, your budget for tracking individuals, that budget has not been expanded since 2007, 2008. And just for the record, costs have gone up since then. So it's not as though your dollar's going farther.
And how much are we spending on all the immigrants? Right. I mean, so like to me, you got to spend some money to make some money, which that's kind of been the motto for a long time, and we're in a mess. But I'm just sitting here as a peon thinking, and man, if we have to pass a bill that's going to put us more in debt. I mean, what's 40 trillion when we're already at 32, 33 trillion, so you pass something it's gonna increase the deficit. Yes, I get that, and I don't want to trivialize it, but I'm saying by comparison. So that's not small potatoes sitting by itself going into further debt.
Right.
But we're comparing it to getting rid of people who are not Americans. Like guys,
millions of them.
Millions. Guys, we have to take our country back. We have to, and when we think of it, we're not just talking about taking back the GDP. We're not just talking about taking back, America as an economic zone that's fiscally solvable. We're talking about the people. America first means Americans. It should mean Americans first. And Americans, answering that question, who is an American? Heritage Americans. This is not just the person who's been here for 15 minutes, that said the magic words and touched the magic soil. No, like
they took a citizenship exam in Spanish or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And is now going to the voting booth and reading, off the options in Spanish. No, we need, America is for Americans, and everybody else has to go back because we don't have anywhere to go back to. This is our home. And so, yes, there are a few things that I'd be willing to go into debt over, but this is one of them. Absolutely one of them. And so if this is what's hamstringing Trump, then I say go for it. And in terms of getting into, we'll get into this more, but the personalities here, the particular feud between Trump and Elon, Trump has his faults, no doubt. And I am, looking, further ahead, kind of shifting gears for just a second. I am concerned about just if you're a new listener and you're like, these guys are normies and they don't know anything that's going on. We're aware of Palantir. We're aware of Peter Thiel. We're aware of Alex Karp, who is Jewish. We're aware of Peter Thiel, who is not Jewish but is a homosexual. Alex Karp is a Democrat, right? He's right wing when it comes to immigration and only deporting one type of person, namely a Palestinian who's negative towards Israel.
Right.
But that technology, Palantir, if you're not familiar with it, it's not like the hardware like NVIDIA, CPUs and chips and things like that. It's the software, AI intelligence that specializes in interpreting in record speed, interpreting wide swaths of data. So it has the ability to scour the internet and to hone in on one person and create a profile that includes their bank account number and their social security number and all these kinds of things.
Well, that's what was just let in with Elon Musk. So as part of his cost-cutting efforts, software was used, supposedly administrated.
And now has probably profiles on all of us.
So you're talking Social Security.
Elon Musk.
And
yes. And so even though, Elon Musk is not directly associated with Palantir, they're all part of the PayPal mafia. Now Elon Musk might at a personal level not like Peter Thiel because Peter Thiel allegedly was involved with David Sachs and others when I think Elon Musk was on his honeymoon.
Yep.
And they
booted him out of
the coup and booted him out of the CEO position of PayPal. So I'm not sitting here saying that they're best friends, but they're all the same strain. And I get it. Like if we don't do AI, China will. I get it. I understand that it's a little bit complex, but there are real concerns with artificial intelligence. And my point is, you couple that with what is being developed right now by Palantir in terms of facial recognition software. And then their ability to interpret data, create profiles, and sure, this is being used in the Middle East for the top 10%, threats they deem as threats against our greatest ally, Israel. But guys like Alex Karp have been outspoken, who's currently the CEO of Palantir, outspokenly hostile against what he considers to be far right extremist, right? Because he's not conservative, not really, not even close. And so all this can be, it's already been kind of infiltrated into the government through Elon and Doge, and used in that process. And so it's like, oh well, we have a constitution. We have the Constitution to protect our rights. Well, the software that's being used right now in the Middle East could easily be used on free American citizens, those deemed to be too far right wing. And it's like, well, this is America. We have the Constitution. They're not going to penalize, people for dissenting political opinions. And it's like, yeah, sure, but they'll just create NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and use Palantir technology and work with them and create profiles. And you won't go to jail. You'll just be unemployable. You just won't be able to feed. You don't go to jail. Just your wife and kids starve. So I'm saying all those the only reason I'm mentioning that is to kind of quickly show my bona fides, because there might be people who are listening in. We're like, these guys don't have a clue. We actually do. I too am familiar with the back alleys of the internet. Right. And I think there's a lot of legitimacy there. And yes, we're also very much aware of Peter Thiel and his ties to Vance. And we like Vance. But that is
we want to like Vance. That's what I'll say for myself. Yeah, okay. I want to like him.
Yeah. But he has multiple crossroads. Mm-hmm. It's so weird. It's like on one hand, with venture capitalists and those kinds of things and the Peter Thiel connections, he has he's going to have an inclination there. But then
Peter
also
Thiel, $15 million, the biggest Senate campaign donation in history.
Right. No, it's big.
Like that's why he is a senator, and that's why he is the vice president of the United States.
Right, because you're talking about a never Trumper who kind of flipped on a dime, and it's like, how did that happen? Well, a lot of money is part of it, and a lot of influential people behind the scenes, and Peter Thiel being one of the premier individuals. So he's going to have a crossroads, and probably already is experiencing it, because on one hand it's like hillbilly elegy, and a real rags to riches, blue collar Appalachia,
Scots Irish,
heart of America type guy. But on the other hand, his ties to big tech and the venture capitalist world and Peter Thiel and those beholden to some of these guys. So there's going to be, a tug of war between his childhood and his early adulthood. And then also like he seems to understand the Order of Morris and Heritage Americans and these kinds of things, but he's also married to an Indian wife, and she seems like a peach, right? So I don't have anything bad to say, but she seems like a wonderful woman. And from what I've heard, it seems as though she's embracing Catholicism and backing away from Hinduism. That's good, praise God. But she is not a heritage American, and so he's both on the nationhood issue of who is an American, and on the issue of is it salt of the earth blue collar Americans, or is it the big tech overlords that I'm beholden to? Vance, I'm not trying to disparage him. I like him. I'll go on record and say I like Vance. But he's going to have some massive temptations, and I want to acknowledge that. So here's the point. Vance is vice president. He's closely connected to Trump, and he has connections to Peter Thiel, and there's Palantir on the horizon, and all these kinds of concerns over here. I wanted to get that out. That said, to boil it down to the current feud that erupted yesterday online between Elon and Trump, despite Vance and despite Thiel and all these things, for me, I didn't vote for Elon Musk. I didn't. Elon Musk didn't take a bullet for me.
You didn't vote for the African to be president.
Yeah, I didn't vote for the African. I voted for the American.
Right.
And so, for me, if it's a battle between Elon Musk and Trump, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
I'm going to side with Trump. I know that Trump is not a perfect man by any stretch. We'll talk about the claim of him being, on the Epstein list.
Yep.
A little bit later on. But despite all of Trump's flaws, if it comes down to what's good for America, passing the bill, and Trump saying we've got to pass the bill so that I can do what I've promised, and Elon saying we can't pass the bill because it doesn't contain the subsidies for my electric cars, it puts us into too much debt. And I really am concerned about this country that I've lived in for 15 minutes. I'm going to go with the American who's currently holding the office of the presidency that I voted for.
Yeah.
And not the foreigner who has done a lot of good things, and I appreciate it, but the distance between Elon Musk and a Peter Thiel is like, can we even see? Is it even discernible by the naked eye? How different are they?
I will throw out Jeff Childress of Coffee and COVID. He had a good, we would be naive to think that Palantir's technology cannot and likely will not be used for just what you're saying, Joel. However, Jeff Childress's Substack this week at some point, I forget which day, had a good breakdown pointing out what actually is being allowed with Palantir right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not the doom and gloom, although it very well could be. His point largely was it's being used to do things like he said there's currently no communication between departments. So if someone dies, that never gets notified to the Social Security Administration to stop paying Social Security benefits to that. So he said the current contract with Palantir is aimed at those sorts of things. I agree, Joel, 100%. The technology is there. It most likely
I have
will
no
be
doubt
rolled
that
out.
it's currently being used
Yep.
in many positive ways.
Yes.
My concern is just the Trojan horse of it coming in the gates and eventually.
And this is what's tough. This is what's tough about the bill. I kind of espoused the positives, played that clip from Miller.
Yep.
We're going to get to some other ones from Massey, Cosmic Treasons, pointing out the AI, and that's a huge problem.
Yep.
But if you have a relatively godly, submissive wife and you guys just have differences, she probably has a point and you probably have a point. Like with Trump and Elon, it's not as though Elon Musk has no point whatsoever. The deficit is fine. You actually are caught in this very difficult, a rock and a hard place. And so Elon Musk, to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's bringing up the very valid point that, back in 2013, 14, 15, he's retweeting what Trump was saying back then. And Trump was all about, we need to cut the deficit. We need to balance the budget. We need to stop this out of control spending. Mike Johnson in 2023, before he was Speaker of the House, was saying the same thing. We got to get in here. We got to cut all of this.
The crazy thing, though, is that's 10 years ago, which isn't that long, but 10 years ago, we didn't have 50 million.
Right.
You have to put that in perspective. Right. In the last 10 years, we had just under the last administration in 4 years, 40 million, right? In terms of what they counted about, they said maybe 9 million that were legal and 11 million that were illegal, but that doesn't even account for all the gotaways and everybody who just slipped through the system. It was never counted. So you got 20 million on the record, and over half of that being illegal immigrants just in 4 years of Biden's administration. And so I think I'm being conservative when I say 30 to 40 million if you count also the gotaways. And then that's just the last 4 years. And so then I'm only tacking on for the previous 7 years, going back to 2013, 10 million total for those 6 or 7 years. And that's how I'm, just for the listener, that's how I'm getting to my 50 million number. And so my point is, as a defense of Trump, I mean, I've said plenty of things at a certain time that were true, but then things change. Things change. And in 10 years, one of the big things that changed is there's a whole lot of people in America who are not Americans,
right,
and do not belong here and are a financial black hole on the country. And it's not like, oh, you know, like if we finally gave them enough, then no, there is no enough. It doesn't matter what. I saw a video just today, like Mr. Beast, you know, a year ago put water whales in, some African village, and in less than a year, none of them worked. And he also brought instructors to teach them how to maintain it, taught them the maintenance, and every single one of the water wells is now abandoned. The reality is, it's not just a matter of resources; it's a matter of the heart. It's a matter of people, and having importing an entire class of people here that are not Americans and that continue to be a strain on Americans financially, and then also our physical health in terms of crime statistics and all these kinds of things.
15 minutes that way,
That's the biggest problem.
18-wheeler piloted by an illegal immigrant who was drunk or intoxicated, plowed into a family, killed 2 kids and 3 adults. Like 15 miles that way. Yeah. And then just over the weekend, I think it was up in Dallas, once again, I think it was at the beach or something like that. Illegal immigrant killed a girl who's celebrating her birthday. Like, this is not just ethereally somewhere, someplace. Right. 3 years ago, someone did a bad thing. Everywhere, economically, fiscally.
I've gotten to the point where in many ways, it's kind of, in many ways, yeah, like I've kind of become a single issue, politically minded.
You become Stephen Miller with a beard.
Like we have to do whatever it takes to get rid of these people. We have to.
Let's hit our first commercial break, and we'll talk about the AI provisions and more about Musk and Trump.
America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reece Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reece Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Well, then Squirrelly Joe's has you covered for all your coffee needs. All of their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring that your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. Right Response listeners have access to an exclusive deal. Your first bag of coffee is free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So head on over to squirrellyjoes.com/right response. Again, that's squirrellyjoes.com/right response to claim your first free bag of coffee today. I'd like to introduce you to a book called On Ruling. It's a book written by a group of guys who live down here in Texas. Now, the subtitle reads this: An Everyday Guide for Christian Patriarchs. And that's precisely what this book is. Now, I'll tell you what this book is not. It's not a Bible study. It's not a devotional. And it's not a boring retread book about leadership or leveling up. No, this book is designed to get you thinking about how to seize more ground and then bring it under good governance. Now, most men are not aware that our mandate is to build civilization right where we are, with a winning culture. We tend to want to outsource that responsibility, or just try to get more comfortable. But that is not what our lives are to be about, gentlemen. Regardless of how many talents our master gave us, we should be making moves to see an increase in all spheres of our lives. One day he will return and ask for our reports. So this book is about all that. It's about governing your heart, household, and enterprise so that the kingdom of God advances. On Ruling is a great book for group study with you and your fellow men, or perhaps even something that you can read in the deer stand. So go and get On Ruling Now from Western Front Books at the link below. That's www.westernfrontbooks.com. All right, here we are.
Okay, so I know we mentioned briefly the debt and the deficit problem, but I think one thing to bring home when we talk about it, we agree, it's a problem. All else being equal, it is not ideal to outspend your GDP to run the deficit up. Let's go ahead and pull up graph number 1, Nate. We are far from the only country in the world, though, that is doing this. I think this is global trade. This is globalism. This is the ease of financial markets where you can trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so this is a graph, if you're listening, of the most indebted countries in the world. It's a little bit older, but it's the best kind of comparison that you can see. And in the yellow, so the bar underneath, you've got 2007. It's the ratio, the percentage of GDP to government, general government debt. So yellow bar, 2007, blue bar, 2017. Every single country on this list, the ratio has increased. United Kingdom, Canada, France, Spain, United States, Japan, Greece. Every single country that's on this list of the most indebted countries in the world, all of them have been increasing their debt to GDP ratio. This is the 10 years, 2007, 2017. The United States, at least on this list, is the 5th. I think it actually might be about the 6th or 7th now at this point. But the United States is behind Japan, Greece, Italy, Portugal, but we're also the biggest economy in the world. So practically speaking, we are not the most in-debt nation, nor are we the only nation that is running up the deficit as a measure of our GDP. Your GDP, your gross domestic product, is basically a measure of your output. If you have a nation and basically it's producing nothing, well, you can't take on much debt at all. But if you're producing a lot, then your debt is not as necessarily a big deal. If you have debt that's a quarter of what you produce, your exports, your money that you're bringing in a given year, I mean, that's no problem at all. If you make $100,000, $25,000 in debt, that's not that bad. You make $100,000, you're paying off $125,000 in debt. All of a sudden, you have a much bigger problem. So the United States is far from alone. China has its debt. Japan has tons of debt. All of these European nations have debt. And in many ways, it's kind of like I would like to say, a system that it's in everybody's best interest to keep going. We worry about defaulting on debt. We worry about, well, what happens if the American dollar doesn't kind of become the standard abroad? Those are real possibilities. But practically speaking, at the end of the day, like Joel said, we need to get these people out. And ultimately, you can just do things also. Like there are measures of just the big part of our debt and spending, it's entitlements.
Yes.
Elon Musk was never going to be able to cut Medicare. Congress is never going to cut Medicare. Congress is never going to cut Social Security.
Trump ran on not cutting it. Exactly. Yep.
So practically speaking, the debt's here. Like with Doge, he was very ambitious. Like we want to cut this, we want to cut this. Nate, you can pull up graph 2 to just kind of show the flow. Guys, most of the spending is in healthcare. It's in pensions. It's in Social Security. You can see here, this is the 2023 fiscal year. It's in defense and veterans. So it's paying out veterans benefit. Let me tell you what, no congressman is coming back to his district with a big smile and a thumbs up and says, hey, veterans, I voted to take away some of your benefits.
Yep.
The change that's going to have to happen is not going to come within this system if we're going to get rid of this. So practically speaking, just looking around, like where are we? What are our actual real legitimate options? This is the situation, and there are just much more important things. Now let's get to AI though. One of the provisions, this is a huge bill. These bill because it's kind of called the one big beautiful bill.
Over 1,000 pages.
It's over 1,000 pages, and it's kind of done to avoid getting bogged down with bills that can fail individually. So you take maybe the immigration thing, and senators start hemming and hawing, I don't know, and then it doesn't get passed. The goal of this, for one, is to do it as budget reconciliation. So that means, as Stephen Miller alluded to it on the call, you need 50 votes instead of 60. So the filibuster is in place in the Senate, meaning you need 60 out of 100 senators to vote for something to approve to pass it. Republicans only have a 53 vote majority. So that means 7 Democrats have to join you. And if they're going to join you and they're going to vote for a Republican bill, they're going to need concessions. Now, the budget reconciliation process is a process by which you only need a simple majority. And that simple majority, then, you're very much so able to pass things that are related to budget. There's debate over, because there's provisions in this bill to get rid of tax permits for silencers. So like if you want to buy a silencer for your firearm, you don't have to get a tax stamp anymore. There's also taking away Medicare and Medicaid money from Planned Parenthood, that they can't be used to go to Planned Parenthood, to procure abortions like that. There's also then, and this is the big one, an AI provision. Now, there's something called the Byrd Rule, which says that, hey, the changes being made have to be relevant to the budget. In this case, funding ICE and funding deportation efforts. So the changes made had to be relevant to the budget. But as politicians do, they'll throw their pork in, they'll throw their spending, they'll throw this, they'll throw that and the other. Because again, this is going to be one of the only chances they have to actually really probably pass most of Trump's agenda. But a really concerning one is a provision that says local states cannot regulate, cannot slow down, cannot hamper the development of AI for 10 years. We're going to do an episode, I've already got it planned out for next week, talking about AI and the things that it's doing. But think about 10 years.
Yeah,
10 years ago from right now was 2015.
Yep.
I mean, podcasts were barely becoming a thing. All sorts of social media platforms didn't exist or were even in their infancy. So we're saying in that bill, 10 years, hey, you can't regulate this whatsoever. And it even goes even farther than that, and it gets into local zoning. So I'm going to play a clip from, I think this is Laura Loomer's show with Thomas Massey talking about, or it's Dana Loesch, talking about these AI provisions and what he's seeing in the bill.
I am prefacing what I'm about to tell you because I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. I went back and read that provision of the bill knowing that you might ask about it on the show. And I found something I didn't find the first time, which is they say in that bill, not only are they going to override state laws, they want to override state or local zoning laws. Now, what does this mean? You know, when you think of AI, okay, well, we're not going to regulate the software that runs on somebody's computer. No, what they're talking about are these data centers that could be located in your neighborhood. And there's been a lot of contention over these data centers. I think that's what the real intent of this part of the bill is. You know, Facebook and some of these other big tech companies have met the not in my backyard, the NIMBY resistance in areas, and AI wants to make sure that they don't run into that. These data facilities can use a lot of water, use a lot of energy, and they don't want the locals telling them where they can and can't put these data centers. They're going to want the data centers closest to where the consumers are, and so you're going to have that tension. And I think, I know, I went back and read the bill before I came on your show. This specific part says that they want to expedite the zoning and the routing. That the reason they put this law in there is to expedite zoning and routing. Routing also is basically code for eminent domain, running those wires, those big fiber optic cables through anybody's yard they want to. I think it's really dangerous to take that power away. This has been an issue in my congressional district, and the local authorities were able to get a planned data center relocated away from the residential neighborhoods, but they wouldn't have that power if this bill passes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there you have it.
Yep.
The bill is big. It is a bill. I don't know about beautiful, but that's basically what you're dealing with. You have all sorts of you have hands in the pot. You have Elon Musk's solar and Tesla subsidies. He's angry about those being taken away.
Right.
You have tax cuts for Americans. You have money being spent on immigration. But you also have things like that AI, which it looks like the pressure on that will probably get that provision stripped from
Should be great.
the bill, which is an awesome example of public pressure on your lawmakers. But that's kind of where we are right now. And I hope, as we've talked about politics more recently and everything like that, you guys just realize how complicated and how difficult and how slow the system moves.
Yep.
Like, practically speaking, it's hard to do. Activism, I think you said it, maybe Michael, even on the show. You want to get a bill passed in Congress, millions of dollars and about 10 years worth of work, of lobbying, of efforts, of donating to campaigns, of meeting with lawmakers. And that's for like non-controversial. Like, you want a water fountain renamed in your district.
That's right.
But practically speaking, we're looking at our one chance in the last, Trump's first term, 4 years, Biden's term, 4 years this year, our first chance since 9 years ago, one more shot to at least get money, very much so, for deportations. So that's the mix of it. We'll get into Trump and Musk here in a second. Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the AI thing will come up more next week with that episode. It's a tough thing right now because in some ways, this is kind of like a global arms race with AI.
Right, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's tricky because when you're in that kind of and we're already behind to China at least supposedly, if you trust anything that comes out of China.
I don't.
But I heard on I think the All In podcast, they were saying that China currently produces 20 times more energy than we do. Now they have a much larger population.
Yeah,
But-
the
and much
less
infrastructure for
scruples.
energy. Yeah,
Yes.
that's where we're falling behind,
Yes.
and that's where like there's all these companies springing up to do like micro
Yep.
nuclear,
Yep.
and then quantum computing is becoming.
That's what it needs it for,
Like-
is for the AI, the quantum computing.
If you look at like some of the quantum computing companies, like QBTS and IonQ,
Yep.
just in the last, those are the ticker handles, but just like 2 weeks ago, they exploded.
Yep.
Like exploded, like
Yep.
jumped up like, close to 50%. So that's one of the big things with this AI rush. Like think of it like the gold rush. Like some people struck gold, literally, and were rich, but most people did not. But the people who definitely got rich were the people who were, selling the shovels and the picks, and the
Right.
gloves.
That's right.
Those people did really well.
Yeah.
And when you think of that as it relates to this AI rush, because that's what it is, it's a global race in the AI rush. A lot of the people who are needed tremendously is not just your Nvidias. Like they've done exceedingly well, but and they're continuing to do incredibly well with like their new CPUs and GPUs and stuff that are coming out that are just continuing to break every record. But there's a certain point where they're 3 million, or 3 trillion market cap, and maybe they could triple over the next 10 years, to be the first $10 trillion company, and that's possible. But the ones that are like going like bonkers are less of like the gold itself and more of the infrastructure.
They do like
for it.
cooling and parts for the cooling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like there's cooling fans, like there's quantum, there's nuclear, there's all these other energy sources. Like energy is going to be the massive demand. And so I have no doubt that China, their infrastructure in terms of energy is probably higher than ours, and maybe by a multiple, by 20 times. I don't know if that's true, but I'm prone to believe that they're ahead in that regard just because of immense state power to just make things happen. Where I can guarantee you they're not ahead is when it comes to just raw innovation.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody is ahead of America
Right.
in terms of innovation. They're not. And that doesn't mean that you can't find geniuses other places, but America, China, and all of the things that it's done, you can look at every single invention and every piece of innovation, and it's like, oh, they and you read into it, and it's like they got that from this American, and got that from this American, and got that from this American, and so like we really are leading the way in the actual technology, the actual innovation, the gold itself. But you're going to need a ton of picks and shovels and gloves and hard hats, and that's where we're falling behind as opposed to China. So you're right, Michael. Like back to the global arms race, in this case, global AI race. That's where it's difficult because it's like, for this to be untethered and there to be no restraints is deeply troubling. But at the same time, China's not going to stop.
Right.
Like they're just, and so it's like
They're trying to build babies in test tubes. They don't care.
right. They don't care. They're just going to like, if they can do it, the only thing that's ever held back China is what they can do. America holds itself back at times based off of what we should do. But most countries are limited by what they can do. America doesn't have nearly as many limits in that regard because Americans are phenomenal and capable of.
And we're a
incredible
fourth of
feats.
their size too. Like comparing the GDP, it's incredible.
Right.
Because you would think like, well, these are nations with the same amount of land mass and same amount of people.
Right.
No. China, for all their centralized authorities, so centralized in the government, the massive amount of people they have, fewer labor laws, fewer restrictions, all of that, bigger land,
Right.
still can't rival American
Well, that's the whole thing
ingenuity.
with H-1Bs and stuff like with India. Like it's like, well, India really does, Joel. Like, you don't hate on India. They really do have some remarkable people and geniuses. It's like, there's 1.3 billion people
Right.
there. like, of course, they have, just laws of averages. They have some geniuses. And that's true. But it's because it's 1.3 billion people.
And I love India so much. I want them to keep those geniuses
that's
to make
right.
India better.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's the thing. We
No, but
keep
for real,
extracting
actually.
the best and brightest from every
Yep.
single country. And then we become, morally dependent, or at least think we are,
Yep.
for being the money bags of the world. That is part of the problem. And so we're replacing our own population. Because now, instead of competing with 330 million fellow Americans, I have to actually compete with the entire world,
Right.
Because they're going to bring the best and brightest here, and they're going to hamstring that country. So
Right.
so number one, I could have got that promotion, but I lost it to whatever. What's the name of the Simpsons character who works the Quickie Mart? I'm trying to think of an Indian name.
Apu?
Apu. Yeah. So I lost the promotion, so I could have been making 20% more. And I lost out on that. And I'm going to get 20% more taxed on the lower wage that I actually have, because I have to support India because we took their best and brightest. So anyway, so that's a huge problem. But aside from that, we are leading the way in innovation. That was my point. But when it comes to like other countries like China, the Chinese Communist Party, and their ability to just, by rule of law, we're going to make this many energy plants, and we're going to nuclear. Well, do we have any concerns about nuclear? Nope. Who cares? Do it. So nuclear and this and
We
that.
blow
and
up
that.
a town, we blow up a town.
We blow up a town. We blow up a town. So,
I know for a fact that to hit a carbon requirement from the UN, they built a dam and flooded a city of 200,000 people pretty much like within a matter of months. Mm-hmm. And they just, boop, okay.
You got to do what you got to do.
So that's the thing, is like when you're competing against hostile countries, like China, and there's nothing restraining them.
Right.
There's no self-restraint, I should say. Then at that point, it's like, yeah, like I understand the sentiment. At the same time, I completely understand no restraints, no guardrails for 10 years, for a decade. And it's like
That's a fever dream of your OpenAI, your Sam Altman's, your
it's terrifying.
Grok, your whatever.
It's absolutely terrifying. The problem is that, like, to me, both alternatives are terrifying.
Right.
So China does it, and we're at their mercy because we're
And we keep all of our
a
immigrants
decade
here.
behind.
So we keep all of our immigrants here because we don't
And
get the
we keep
funding.
all of our
And
So China, is light years ahead, because you have to understand that, like, the way that history works is like when it rains, it pours. So like there are wide swaths of history where not much happened.
Right.
Like that doesn't mean that those people aren't important in the sight of God. There's families and mothers and fathers, but in terms of like development and innovation and discovery, you think of like Stone Age and Bronze Age, and we've been living kind of in the age of silicon for the last, I don't know, like 50 to 80 years or so. So you think of like screens and TVs and phones and
transistors and chargers.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And now we're entering into. My point is, like, what you'll see for like 80 years, there'll be a discovery that turns a chapter. And then, it's just further applications of that discovery that turn a page.
Right.
It's like, TVs, and then it's like, phones, and then it's smartphones. And it's like, whoa, this is incredible. But these are just like turning pages, but you're still in the same chapter.
Right.
But right now I really believe we are on the cusp of turning a chapter.
Right.
Not just a page. And so when we say, like, look at what happened in the last 10 years, and it could be like that. Now, I don't think it'll be anything like that. I think it'll be exponentially more than that. I think like there are going to be the discoveries and inventions and applications that come out of artificial intelligence and quantum computing and nuclear and all these kinds of things that are all kind of teeing up at the same time to say we're going to run a race against China, but we're going to put weights on our ankles and our chest for the first 10 years of this race. Right. Like a marathon for the 26 miles, the first 10 miles, we're going to let China start at the 10-mile line and only have to run 16 miles. Like, so it's just both are terrifying. Both options are terrifying.
And the answer, obviously, is a little bit of a pipe dream, but the original envisioning of America and its national policy was protectionist and nationalist.
Right.
And so ultimately, what's going to happen with all of this debt and everything? You're just going to have to come in. And this happened after World War I with Germany. They just said, we're not paying it. They sacked them at the Treaty of Versailles with millions and millions. It destroyed their economy. And they just literally said, we're not paying it. And so for the same thing for the United States, we're going to have to say, we've prioritized foreign trade, we've prioritized foreign markets and importing all of these goods. We're going to stop doing it, and you're not going to be happy with us. We're not competing with you as far as AI and making AI movies and AI this and AI that. We exist for America. Our borders are closed. We're closed as far as a capitalist market. We make stuff for our citizens, and it stays here. Ultimately, that's probably the only real, turning pages, turning chapters. That's going to have to be the next chapter. There's not going to be some 20-year plan to balance the budget. Like, it's all going to keep spending. We're all going to do these arms races until you get to the point where the citizens of the nation say, and it doesn't even have to be all of them, say, I just don't really care. I don't really care about getting slop from China. I don't really care about importing junk manufactured in Bangladesh. We can do it here, and it's going to be better for us. And it'll hurt in the short term, but we'll never pay off all this debt we have. And I kind of just want America to be for Americans. I think that's going to have to be the next chapter. Anything less than that, you're in the same boat. You're in the same boat of debt. You're in the same boat of trade. You're in the same boat of just being reliant on foreign production and everything like that. We can make it here. We should do it here. We should work towards that as much as possible. And at a certain point, you rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're not paying that debt. That's the idealistic 30-year-old.
I don't know. Because a lot of our debt is owed to our, it's not
allies.
all owned by foreigners. Well, it's not even all owned by our allies. A lot of it's owned by Americans, like bonds, and we've loaned money to Social Security. And
and those internally you deal with differently. But as far as external debts, and they most certainly owe us money too. So at the same time, we cancel. Hey, you owe us, 15 trillion. We owe you 20. We're kind of going to call it a wash because we're just for ourselves. Something like that is, I think, going to have to be the future. Or you're looking at global destabilization of all currency. None of these options are great. Hyperinflation, global destabilization. Of course, your allies are going to be pissed. But here's the deal. What are you going to do? Cross the ocean, go to war with us? How did that work out? Britain tried it. Japan tried it. It didn't work.
Right. So the problem, the difficulty, I hear you. The difficulty is we've made such a mess that it's hard to get out of it. Like, it would be immensely painful in the short run to isolate and say America's for America.
Listen, if I can't get my Guatemalan coffee, I am not going to live.
Right. So
that
first,
is a good point.
Well, that's first. We have the recipes, but first,
we don't have the climate.
That's true. But the first thing that you would have to do is you'd have to bring a ton of stuff back, and starting with essentials like medicine. I mean, the fact that, like, right now, if we entered into World War III, it's not just the casualties of war, but there'd be a ton of people who can't get their insulin, and things like that. So,
but I trust American ingenuity to build these things. There was people who were saying it'll take 3 years to build the infrastructure and the scale to manufacture the COVID vaccines. They had those bad boys on the assembly line in 3 months.
Killed everyone.
Come down to it. That's a bad example. But come down to it. 50 million Americans need insulin. We could make it happen.
Yeah, probably.
To your point, like, it would be difficult and not easy. But if push came to shove, I think we could do it.
Yeah, chips and medicine are
chips.
Well, we're working on the chips, though. I mean, we are starting to build plants here. So
right, but those are the things that Trump is like.
And that's what Trump's best at.
He's kind of, he's kind of heading that direction. That's the point of all the tariffs. It's like, well, look at, the stock market is down, whatever. Like, it's already made a pretty good recovery, and I admit, part of the recovery is due to the fact that Trump has backed off on tariffs substantially to where, typical Trump, his bark has been bigger than his bite. But the point is, there's just so many different pieces, and the easiest piece, the first piece, before trying to get all of your manufacturing back where everything's made here, and then cutting off to where, like, we're not beholden to all these other countries. The first thing is, before you bring industry back, send the people out, get the people out, and that would right there take care of a lot. But you're right. Like, I think long term, in terms of the debt and those kinds of things, like we're beholden to so many people because we've we've helped to create this globalist system, and we're a part of it, and we're codependent.
Like I want my children to own, and I'm working on owning too, real assets, owning your real estate, owning businesses that actually do something. So it's not your SaaS, it's not software as a service, but it's real businesses, real estate, real tangible assets, your food, your beans, your bullets, your bandages, owning those things as much as possible, hedging against, we've talked about before, just the instability of the American dollar. There comes a certain point where people say, you've printed so many of these things, and we are printing more of them, and this bill will print more of them. This thing is just not worth anything.
Before we move on, there was Ben Huffstetler entered the chat with a major super chat. So Joel, you need to at least hit that before we. Yeah,
we've got a lot of super chats on this one. Let's start at the top. We have one more commercial break that we're going to go to in a minute. We'll start with Ben.
Yep.
Ben Huffstetler, faithful, as surely as the sun will rise. Ben Huffstetler is single-handedly supporting this ministry. $300 super chat from Ben. Thank you. We appreciate it. He said, "Stay strong, brothers. We need men called to the front lines in the battle of life. Keep it up. Moving to Kentucky next week and looking to start a reformed borough there. Prayers appreciated for the journey. Praise the one true King for the grace that we have daily." Amen. Let me pray for Ben real quick. Father, I pray that you would bless his move, that it would be a good transition for him and his family, and that you would indeed help him to be able to consolidate with other brothers and sisters in Christ who fear you, who are like-minded, who love your word, and love our country, and want to see America bow the knee to King Jesus, and for us to live according to his law. And Lord, I pray that he'd be able to find a solid church and a solid community. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. A couple more super chats, Nathan, if you could go to the top.
Let's hit our last ad. I got one thing on Trump and Elon, and then we'll hit all of these.
Okay. All right. We'll do the super chats last. Hang with us. We're going to go to one more commercial break. At Kingsmen Caps, we believe that every man is called to carry the crown. That is, to seek out and gain glory, and ultimately to give that glory to Christ. Our hats aren't just apparel, they're a symbol of sacred duty. We're forming a coalition of men who walk with conviction, courage, and humility, knowing the honor we bear is not ours to claim, but ours to carry. Through Kingsmen Caps, we are starting a brotherhood of men who live to honor Christ as King, and who will one day lay their crowns at his feet. Every Kingsmen Cap is crafted with premium materials, rugged construction, and timeless designs made to endure the burdens and battles of life. We've just released our newest colorway, the Illumination, an all-white country fit featuring a bold 5-panel design and a clean white-on-white logo. It's built for those who walk in the light. Join the brotherhood and carry the crown. And if you're building God's kingdom through your own business, brand, or venture, we now offer custom hat orders with an easy process and a 100 hat minimum per style and color. Step 1. Go to kingsmencaps.com to contact us with your custom hat inquiry. Step 2. Send us your logo and brand colors. Step 3. Choose your hat style and details. Step 4. We'll take care of the rest. Carry the crown because Christ is King. Go to kingsmencaps.com to get yours today and join the brotherhood. Running your business with purpose means looking beyond last month's numbers to next year's vision. Kaylee Smith offers CFO-level strategy scaled just for small businesses. At Midstate Accounting, she takes care of your compliance, bookkeeping, and tax returns while providing holistic advisory and fractional CFO services to help you steward your resources with a distinctly Christian perspective. Ready to align your finances with your future? Then call Kaylee Smith at 573-889-7278 for a free, no-obligation consultation. Mention the Right Response podcast to get 10% off your first 3 months. Prefer to explore online? Then you can visit midstateaccounting.net to learn more or schedule a call. Again, that's midstateaccounting.net. With Mid-State Accounting, you'll plan for tomorrow while operating in faith today. So call Kaylee Smith at 573-889-7278. Again, that's 573-889-7278. Heaven's Harvest takes pride in providing you with the best freeze-dried emergency survival food kits on the market. Their kits stand out because they prioritize serving sizes and calories that will sustain you for the long haul. No gimmicks, no fillers, just a diverse array of nutritious options that will pleasantly surprise you. But they're more than just emergency food. They're advocates for sustainable preparedness. Their heirloom seed kits include heirloom, non-GMO, non-hybrid, open-pollinated seeds, ensuring that your garden produces the same quality and variety year after year. Packaged in high-grade mylar foil, their seeds have a 10-year shelf life. So get 10% off your Heaven's Harvest order by using our special discount code RRM at checkout or by clicking the link in the description below. Made in the USA and free shipping on orders above $99 for the US only. All right, we're back. So let's talk a little bit more about Trump and Elon, and then we'll get to the super chats. We've got some good ones today. In terms
I have
of
a graph too that'll help once you get a second.
Okay. In terms of the Epstein comment, right?
Yeah.
Here's the big one. Trump's name, the reason he won't release the Epstein files is because his name is on it. Have a nice day, DJ.
Right.
That's right.
Pretty petty and immature. This is why foreigners have to go back. Send them back. But I do we think that's legitimate? My opinion, I'd love to hear Michael and Wes. I think absolutely not. I think there's no way Biden had access to this. The Biden administration, Biden was, eating applesauce and taking naps, but whoever was running the country for 4 years, Dems were in charge. They had a majority in the House and the Senate for a while. And so I think anything that would have, they threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at Trump. I think it would have been used. So is he in the document? We know, we've known for 10 years at this point that he's in the Epstein files in the sense that he had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But there's
Epstein was part of the Mar-a-Lago club.
Right.
Trump kicked him out.
But there's a far cry between, it's a pretty wide spectrum between I'm friends with Jeffrey Epstein versus I'm actually committing heinous acts that are unspeakable against children.
Right.
I don't think that any bombshell like that, if Trump had actually engaged in any illegal activity, we would have heard about it.
Right.
So yeah. I think Elon's being cute, and I don't think it's a bold-faced lie in the sense that Trump's name's nowhere to be found.
Right.
But I think he's basically saying a half-truth, he's in the files. And technically he is, but not in any incriminating way. If it was, we would have heard. That would have been used against him already. So that to me is just one more reason. When I saw that, it's I was already going to take Trump's side. Again, Trump has faults, but given those two choices, Elon and Trump, and then when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is just. Pretty actually it kind of surprised me, pretty
right.
low.
Yeah.
Pretty low. So I understand that Elon's frustrated. From his perspective, it's look, I came in and worked hard. He didn't work well. It wasn't successful, but I came in to cut waste, right? Doge, and the original promise was $2 trillion. And then they cut that down to $1 trillion, and it ended up being 160 billion, and they couldn't even produce tax receipts for the 160 billion. I think the only receipts and even it was 65 billion. So you're talking about at that point, so from 2 trillion down to 65 billion. So you're talking about 0.325% of what was originally promised, and then even in that they found question marks. So you're talking about a guy who, yes, he did work at cutting waste and cutting the spending, but it wasn't super successful. But the point is, he wants to cut all this spending, And then he finds out that, like you're actually going to spend even more. You're going to not only cut debt, but accrue more debt. And the cherry on top is, for him, it's probably a personal slight. Is like, I worked to help you get elected. Now, whether or not Trump still would have been elected without Elon's influence is, nobody knows. I think he still would have been elected. I think the number one thing that got him elected was fight. Right. That moment was iconic. But the point is that from Elon's perspective, it's like, you brought me in to cut waste. I did the best I could. And then you present a bill that actually takes on even more debt. But the one thing that you are able to cut is the thing that affects my companies. And I put my company, and I've already taken a huge hit. People are bombing Tesla factories.
Right.
I mean, he's like, in terms of his stock, he's lost $100 billion. He cut more from his own companies than he cut from the national budget. That's really sad when you put it like, so
they did shut down USAID.
Yep.
They did.
Until a judge in like Alabama undoes it.
Yeah, we'll see. But which is why we need the bill to pass. We need Trump to be able to have the power to push forward his agenda. But that's the point, is that like I understand at the personal level for Elon, it's like, so you're going to accrue even more debt, and I paid this price, like an actual, I don't know many people who've paid $100 billion to try to help the country, and he's like, and you're going to cut the spending on, the tax credits and all that kind of stuff for EV. That it directly affects my company, but all these other things you're not going to cut. So you're perfectly comfortable with debt, but just not the debt that helps me after I've already paid this price. So I understand why Elon is mad, but in terms of like legitimacy of what needs to happen, the American people do not need to be forced to buy hybrid cars. We should be able to buy whatever car we want to buy. We should be able to use, like that.
Ideally, the government is not subsidizing the purchase, as in the only reason people buy them is because the government's coming in and plugging you checks to purchase them.
Yeah, at some point, like Tesla and some of these companies, you have to be able to stand on your own two legs. I understand if you're a startup, you're 2 years in or something like that, but you're talking about a company that's been around for quite a while. And if you're not profitable apart from government subsidies, then you're not profitable. Like it's not that good of a company.
Elon did come out and tweet and said, fine, keep the EV vehicles the way it is. Just cut the wasteful spending. I don't care.
Well, good on him for that.
Yeah.
So, but my point is, I don't think that was a personal slight on Trump's part towards Elon. I think I think that it's not just his decision, but everybody who's involved in the writing of this bill, I think that was the right decision, is to take away subsidies from all the EV stuff. And I also think it's the right decision, even if it accrues more debt, to make those financial concessions that have to be made in order for the bill to pass, so that they can save the country and get rid of millions of people. So in terms of policy, I'm 100% on Trump's side. In terms of the personal feud between them, I'm sympathetic. I understand where Elon's coming from. But again, nobody voted for Elon.
Yeah.
And I think he's in principle wrong.
Yeah, my two comments on this are, number one, if Trump is involved at the level of the Epstein files, that is, pedophilia and all that sort of thing, he doesn't get a pass, right? Just because he's the Republican. Like, if that were to come out, we would roundly condemn and call for his impeachment and criminal punishment, execution, depending on, all of that. He doesn't get a pass just because he's Republican or the president. Second, though, I forget who I heard saying, Elon Musk is like the 20-year-old who joins a political campaign for the first time.
Right.
And so he comes in we're going to change the world.
Right. And
his response is similar to a lot of ideological 20-year-olds who find out that they're not going to change the world in 6 months. And it looks really terrible on a 50-year-old man, as opposed to like
who is the richest man. Yeah,
that's right.
It looks bad.
If you read Eric Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk, he definitely traces this pattern of behavior. It's his ambition that makes him so powerful. We're going to come in and we're going to cut $2 trillion of government spending. Like, hats off.
Yep.
And sometimes SpaceX rockets, Tesla, literally just sheer willpower, he accomplishes
Yep.
it. But it's also his greatest downfall. So set goals that are just, they're all practically impossible. And then when they become impossible, and he gets it from his father, and I'm sympathetic to it, but it's definitely something that he does not take lightly. I mean, the guy who's trying to take us to Mars, like he's not the kind of guy who's like super soft spoken,
Right.
and then he gets, insulted, and he's like, well, that's water off a duck's back. Like, no, I mean, guys, it's Elon Musk. So
He blows up. Yeah.
I know John Dupre and Cameron Stevenson, they both suggested, is this maybe the uniparty kind of playing, they're kind of like playing, back and forth, or is this to get the Epstein files out? I think the Epstein files have been incinerated, shredded, destroyed. Everything that's left is stuff we already know. We already know the ties to Mossad. We already know about the blackmail. We already know Trump visited with Epstein. I just don't think there's any bombshells left.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think there were, but yeah, I think it's never going to see the light of day.
Right.
Did you have a graph you were going to show, Wes?
Nope. I'm just looking for a Bible passage.
Okay, let's go ahead and deal with some of the super chats. And then Nathan, you could also start to formulate other questions outside of super chats. If we have time, we'll get to them. Evan Davies gave £5. He said, praying both men come to the Lord and reconcile. May we see more of Psalm 133:1. Keep up the great work, guys. Christ is King.
Amen.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It would be great if Elon became a Christian, and Trump, if he's not already, if he became a Christian. Trump is either a professing Christian or a nominal Christian. It'd be great to see that happen for both of them. Cool Dude gave us $10. Thank you, Cool Dude. He says, it annoys me that Thiel and co. name all their wicked tech after Tolkien lore. Tolkien would despise it all. Sick. Great show, RRM. Thanks, Cool Dude. Appreciate that.
Great stuff.
Yeah, it is funny, like how many people, there's so many libs that like are trying to hijack C.S.
Right.
Lewis, for instance, and like C.S. Lewis was a liberal. It's
Right.
like, what are you talking about?
And it gives the cover too, because the thing about Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, they're not woke in the traditional sense. And so it kind of creates like a faux kind of right-wing movement. That's been kind of the point, is that you have these guys, be it from Claremont or be it the Peter Thiels or be it even Bronze Age pervert, and they look like they're the right wing and they're based and they're this, that, or the other. But then you get down to it and like, wait, you say that share the same technocratic assumptions about the malleability of what it means to be a human being. And you use all this language and you're against wokeness. And so if most conservatives, like that's all we need to see. This is our guy. And what we're trying to say is look a little deeper. What is the fundamental orientation, priority? What's their stance on Israel? How do they actually feel about all of these things before you sign up and you say, this is great?
Yeah. Let's see. Nick, or Appeal to Heaven.
Yep.
Appeal to Heaven 7. Super chat, $2. We appreciate it. He says, Elon is a lolbert at heart. Hate to say it. I think just somebody who just incurs, laughs,
Unfortunately.
like a lol cow.
But he's the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
I'd be a lolbert if I got to be the richest man in the world. I'd take it for free at this point, pretty much.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate that. Luke McLam, $20. Luke McLam, he says, an illegal immigrant with no insurance rear-ended my 94 Celica last week. I support the big, beautiful bill more than ever. Time for the lads to go. Agreed. Yeah, I agree.
And for those of you listening, a 94 Celica sounds like a really old car. I think that's like a really nice car that people try to get their hands on. So,
not a Toyota Camry.
Right.
Okay, this one is from Neville. Neville says, do you think AI is a net negative for humanity? How do you think AI plays into eschatology?
It's a great question for next week's episode.
Yeah,
we're going to do
pretty
an
heavily
episode
next
on
week.
it.
Yep.
My just brief one is, in terms of narrow AI, which is all we have right now, it's not actually sentient. It's not actually conscious. It's not human or thinking for itself. It appears to be thinking for itself, but it's just, scouring the internet and putting, it's patterns. And so like true artificial intelligence that's, sentient. I personally don't think that that it's possible, is my position. So I think that that's something that would be terrible and incredibly dangerous, and something that's outside of the bounds of the world that God created in His natural order. So I don't think it's possible. Just like like pigs flying or something like that. So the type of AI that we're talking about, narrow AI, is a tool. It's a really, really powerful tool. And so I think just like with the invention of every tool, whether it be a hammer or whether it be, an AR, or whatever the tool is, with tools come incredible abilities to produce things and also incredible risks and dangers. So the question is not inherently, is AI good or bad? I think the question remains, will we wield it well? Can we use it well?
I don't know. We might have to debate it next week.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I don't feel great about our leadership class here, much less, China.
There are fundamental assumptions, definitions of utility that are built into AI. Like it's only possible for something to be built at the internet, which is built upon, be it the Industrial Revolution and ultimately the printing press, like the mass production of recording of words and all of that. So this is kind of, in some ways, it feels like the end stage. Like if we're going to do the internet and we're going to have data available, then why not take a lot of data? Why not have jobs that relate to collating data? And then if we're going to collate data, why don't we do it faster? And we do it faster, ultimately, not by doing it by humans, but by machines. And that's what it means to be productive, is to collate. So we'll have to explore more of that next week. But
yeah. All right, we've got one more super chat.
We got Nick Bonner, Bonner.
Slip of the tongue there.
$20 super chat from Nick, great brother. I'd like to export a few worthless Canadian dollars to right response for being based. He sent Canadian 20, which, what is that? $3, $4 American?
$3 or $4.
The way we keep printing, I don't know. They might beat us.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate that. And then Kevin Ellis is our last super chat for today. He gave us $10. You think it's
I don't think
there's no L. My bad.
Ice.
Kevin Ice. $10 from Kevin. Thank you. He said, is habitual. All right, so this is a topic change, but we'll do our best to address it.
If you have kids, probably not.
Yeah.
Don't finish it out.
Yeah, listening morning for the children. He's asking a question about marital fidelity. Is habitual porn use grounds for divorce? What are your thoughts on a wife who catches her husband watching porn again and again, asking him to leave their home until he shows signs of change?
Yeah. Let me add some context here in the Greek because it's important. So Matthew chapter 5 is the premier teaching on, we think of what pornography would relate to. This would be adultery.
19:9 is a sister verse. It's almost identical.
And then that's but there's a little bit of a difference in the words that he has here. So
actually,
this is where
it's the same in both.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
So Matthew 5:27, you have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. And so adultery there is a Greek word. It's, I don't know how to pronounce it very well, but mokeu. It starts with an M and it's a different Greek word. You shall not commit adultery. And it's referencing there the literal actual act of adultery. You can fill in what that means. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery, same word, with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it off you, for it is better you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. And he follows that up. So that was verse 27, follows that up in verse 31. Whoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of, and he uses a different word here, not the word that starts with an M, but the Greek word porneia. Whoever divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. A couple years ago, I did think that it was more narrowly simply adultery that's in reference. So Jesus says, look, there's physical adultery, there's adultery of the heart, but only the physical one is what technically would qualify as grounds for divorce. But the word that Jesus does use in his teaching in Matthew 5 and Matthew 19, whoever divorces his wife except on grounds of sexual immorality, that Greek word porneia, it has the idea of immorality, of lewdness, of lasciviousness, of visiting brothels and prostitution. So it's kind of a big catch-all for fornication and uncleanness. Except on these grounds, unless someone does that, he himself then commits adultery. He's betrayed his marital vows. And so you have to be really careful, because if you tie it back to that verse, 27, just a couple verses ago, what you could say is every man ever that has just looked, we're not even talking pornography at this point, has looked at a woman lustfully. And Jesus says that, and it is a sin. Who has looked at a woman lustfully has committed adultery in his heart. So because he's committed that act, then therefore there's sexual immorality. And so any wife ever, if his eyes linger too long on Buffalo Wild Wings, there it is. He was unfaithful in his marriage. That is not, categorically, that is not
Right.
what is in view what Jesus is saying. Now, I don't think he strictly limits it to, well, technically, we literally didn't sleep together, but we did X and Y and Z, and I've been using pornography and masturbation and all of that. No, Jesus is saying, no, these are uncleanness and they are grounds for divorce. However, I think your keys would be unrepentant and long-term. I want to open it up, but so kind of in that question, you're talking to a husband again and again and again. I would add to that repentant. I think there's cause for separation. That's what you start with first. Separation with the aim of restoration. You are, of course, involving the church. The church is calling to him to repent. And then not just repent in word. Okay, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Action. Get rid of your laptop. Get rid of your phone. Put covenant eyes on. Maybe where you work, whatever it is like this, the people you surround yourself with. So the church, they're calling him to repentance in word and in deed. And then if it gets to the point where there's not that, separation for the safety of the wife, the safety of the children, with the aim not being separation towards divorce, but separation for a time for him to come to his senses and say, I need to get this under control. God's going to throw me in hell, first of all, but I'm also going to lose my marriage and my family. I think that's the best framing. It's most faithful to Jesus' words and what Jesus is conveying in the Gospel of Matthew.
What do you think, Michael?
I don't, it's not that I disagree. It's just that it does come down at a certain point to a determination by elders of a church to at what point it has been unrepentant or repentant or et cetera. And if it does come down to a wisdom determination, a discernment determination, ironically, I'm arguing the opposite of what I said in the little break between the commercials. There's not an objective standard there anymore, right? Because at some point it is, we as elders have determined that this is X amount or X lack of repentant or
you did it 10 times in 1 month.
Yes. And so I think clearly there is a point where using pornography becomes grounds for divorce. But what's really tricky is with adultery, like a physical act, there's an objective, it either happened or it didn't.
And that's what I used to think until like the word Jesus does use there and all of its context and all of its broader usage from Paul and his epistles, it is broader. And I think Jesus' intention is to say, again, like a man couldn't come and be like, well, technically I didn't. Like, no, he is living in a sexually immoral lifestyle that's destroying his body, destroying his wife and their family. It's at a certain point dangerous to be around. So Jesus says these would be grounds if persisted in.
Because the context is, it seems like there's a man, or probably a man, who wants to divorce his wife frivolously.
Right.
Right. And Jesus is saying, you were told, if you're going to do that, if you're just going to get rid of her, get a new wife or whatever, you have to give her a certificate of divorce.
But I tell you that no, the intention is that you stay married, and only upon the grounds of sexual immorality can you get divorced. And so the appealer here, or the person that Jesus is arguing against, is looking for, how can I get out of a marriage?
Right.
We have to start this conversation too with the statement that ideally, even in the case of adultery, I'm not saying it would be easy or quick, but ideally, if the man would repent or the woman would repent, and there can be a reunification, like even there, it would be ideal he repents or she repents fully, they come back together. What Jesus is saying is, what can get you out of a marriage?
Right. What makes it permissible?
What makes it permissible for you to leave?
The ideal is almost always reconciliation.
Yes. Yeah. And so then with the pornography question, it does come down to a discernment and wisdom and help from elders. And so I'm not saying that it's not grounds for divorce. I'm saying it is a little bit of it becomes a discernment question that a local body of elders has to navigate through very carefully.
Yeah, what's difficult with it is, in the case of adultery, indeed, not just the matter of the heart, not just the spirit of adultery, but action, behavior. In the case of full-blown adultery, it could be a scenario where it is a one-off event,
right?
Where a man or a woman gives into that temptation and commits that specific, right? It's very tangible and objective, specific behavior, and then, is either caught, or here's the thing, because it's an argument for permissibility, It could be that that the individual even comes and confesses and is repentant, and it only happened one time.
Yep.
And biblically speaking,
The wife can still divorce.
that
or the
that
husband.
the other spouse
Yep.
could divorce them.
Yep.
And because it's an argument from permissibility. So it's not about the ideal. Like we as elders, Michael and I, that guy confesses, that guy comes and he's brokenhearted, he's in tears. I love you, I'm so sorry. Like we would counsel that wife all day long to do her best to forgive her husband and to reconcile the marriage. But if she was determined that she wanted a divorce, we would not place her under church discipline.
Right.
She wouldn't be disciplined for it. So when I compare that to the broader context of, porneia and thinking of all forms of sexual immorality, if a guy looked at pornography one time and same scenario, confesses to his wife and is truly repentant and in tears, and that wife said, I forgive him. He's asked for my forgiveness. I forgive him, but I do not trust him, and I'd like to divorce him. We would say, you're not permitted to divorce him. So that's where all of a sudden the subjective comes in, where Wes, you have to begin making the argument of, well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if it's this number of times, or if there's no repentance, or if it's habitual, or if it's, it's been for a month or for a year or for a decade. But it's categorically different in the sense that in the case of adultery, to me, this is the big objective difference. In the case of actual adultery, it could be one time and the person could immediately confess and be truly repentant, and that spouse could divorce them without any ecclesiastical consequences.
Right.
We would not put their spouse under church discipline. Whereas in the other case, and I've literally pastored a case like this a few years back, where there was no adultery in actuality, indeed, but an individual who struggled with lust and masturbation, and confessed, was not caught, confessed, and was repentant, and the wife literally used that argument to divorce her husband. And in the state of Texas, it could be just one side. And so she went all the way through with it. We pleaded with her for months to change her mind, not to do it. And she divorced her husband. And I believe that was absolutely a sin. And that's in our whole church. It was one of those matters that rose to the level where we had to tell it to the church per Matthew 18. And the church agreed unanimously that she was in sin, and that it was not a lawful divorce, because the man was repentant, he confessed, and he changed, repentant in word and in deed. He changed his behavior. But I'm just saying that the key difference is if it was that exact same scenario, but instead of lust and masturbation, insert adultery, we would have said, we think this is the wrong decision, and gosh, we wish that you seek to reconcile, and please don't do this. But she wouldn't be placed under church discipline. She would not be penalized for the decision of that divorce. I think that's the
it's tough.
Categorical difference. So it's really tough. And then the last thing I was going to say that further complicates it is kind of getting back to something that we've talked about in the past, and that we actually are going to talk about a little bit next week when we, do an episode on gambling, and how like part of what makes gambling so difficult today, that gambling is, it's almost like the oldest profession, like prostitution. I mean, it's pretty old. But used to, like you had to do the walk of shame, you got to walk to the bad part of town and go to, the casino, or whatever, or the den of thieves, the back room, and everybody knows what you're doing, and you're paying a social consequence. And it's just in terms of, aside from just the shame, culturally shameful, societal shame, it's also just practically inconvenient. You got to put on pants, you got to walk down the street or hop in your car. And then even when you think of, modern times here in the United States, it's like, I've got to fly all the way to Vegas, and take time off of work and do this and make arrangements and get a hotel. And, but now with sports gambling, being able to just on your phone anytime, and you can bet on anything. You can bet on politics. You can bet on anything. And so
You can bet on anything, and you can bet any amount.
Any amount from the click of a button, laying in bed at night. Well, same kind of concept applied to porneia. Like there was a time where it's like when you think of the premeditated, like we have these categories even when it comes to murder. There's a crime of passion, and then there's premeditated murder. Like this person he's been noodling, right? We like that word. He's been noodling on this murder for quite some time. I mean, he even busted out the whiteboard, the charts, he was plotting, he was scheming, he was planning.
At the range.
And we would all agree that like, that is another level of malice.
Right.
Now, regardless of whether it incurs a different punishment, because biblically speaking, there's not three categories of third degree manslaughter and then second degree crime of passion and then first degree premeditated. Biblically, there's only two categories, not three. There's manslaughter, so it was an accidental death, and then intentional. And that intent could be in the moment, crime of passion, or it could be premeditated.
Yep.
But both of those cases merit capital punishment. So the punishment is the same. So, and I'm going to go with the Bible. So I agree with that in terms of the punishment for second degree, crime of passion and premeditated. I think both should be capital punishment. But I even though I agree, of course, with the Bible and the penalties it ascribes, I think that there's nothing biblically to argue against the fact that the point that I'm making right now, which is both merit the death penalty, but I think that one does still involve a higher degree of animus and malice and wickedness. The one that was plotted and schemed, and like it's not just I lost self-control in a moment. It's like I've been sitting here for months or even a couple years plotting and scheming. I think that's a greater wickedness. So that being said, when it comes to porneia, there is a different degree of wickedness. The guy who waits till his wife is on a trip out of town, and then he saves up his money. He has to pay for it, and then he's going across town, or he has to leave the state, or the province, the area, and go somewhere else and find a brothel and put, like that's different. Like I think of like biblical times, in the first century, and I think like in their culture, if there was a man who on a daily basis was seeing women in their undergarments, they would say, yeah, this man is riddled with porneia. And in our context, I think, that's a man who goes to the public park.
Right.
During the summer.
Yeah.
Like shorts that are literally somehow, defies the laws of physics, but shorts that are actually shorter than underwear itself.
Right.
Or like, what's the difference between a woman covering herself, in her underwear versus a woman who is perfectly comfortable? Well, if it's a swimsuit.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes socially acceptable, to wear your underwear in public. And so my point is, like, when you think of technology, the cell phone, the access to porn, you think of the culture and the lack of modesty and just the way that people dress. If you're just even going to the grocery store, like you could make an argument. We've made this argument that you in our culture today probably shouldn't go to public pools. We've made that argument. But these days it's like,
because they're playing rap music, right?
Yes, yeah. Both.
Oh, the other reason.
Both, the rap music and the skimpy bathing suits. But these days, like you could just about make that same argument for why you can't go to Whole Foods.
Right. Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
The Costco would still be okay because there you've got full hijab or
right.
There you actually, but even in that case, you still got the midriff, right? Like that 80-year-old, it's crazy, dude. But the 80-year-old Indian women,
I don't think there's a lot of risk.
They're dressed head to toe except for the midriff.
Falls into the porneia.
Yeah, I don't know if that counts.
I'm not at risk.
But
Let me just
I'm
put
just
it that
saying,
way.
dude. But I'm saying we live in Texas, and this is like a weekly occurrence. When we go to Costco, and I'm like, here,
you got to go to a different Costco. I'm just going to put that out there.
No,
every Costco. It's not. Not the one that we go to. No.
Really?
Yeah.
Nathan, can you confirm?
Is it Sam's Club that you go to?
No, we go to the one up
in Georgetown?
the North Georgetown one.
Yeah, we go to the one in Round Rock. Nathan, do you go to the Georgetown Costco?
Yeah, you don't. There isn't a Costco in Round Rock.
Yeah, my bad. I don't know these things. Have you been to the Georgetown one? Yeah. Is it better?
There's more diversity there. I'll give it that. I've been to both.
Nathan won't even answer the question. He's like, the way I phrase it, better. He knows what I mean. But anyways, the point is, you get my point. So Costco, who knows what the attire is going to be because you have every nation in the world represented. But seriously, like the point is, it's not just the swimming pool anymore. It's the public park. It's right. Can I go on a walk in my neighborhood? And there's some girl with like booty shorts jogging. And so anyways, my point is just when I think of like what you're arguing, Wesley, like it was very well articulated, and especially, of course, using the scripture that it's an actual different word. You're right, but my concern is, with what Michael was saying, like in terms of like how do we execute this? How do we carry it out as a church and like as elders? And I'm thinking, I would never make that argument. This guy looked at porn once and confessed and is deeply repentant, and it is now permissible for the wife to divorce him. Or this guy went to the swimming pool with his family, and his wife, caught him looking too long at some teenage girl, but he repented of it, and it's like, if she wants, she can wreck the marriage. I mean, that to me would be insane. Yeah. And so it's just crazy. Like when I think of like this world, our culture today, technologically, the accessibility, the lack of modesty in real life, and coupling those two things together, and then you couple that also with feminism. So it's already, as it pertains, if it's the man who's failing, it's already ingrained in the hearts of not all, but many women, to want out of the marriage. And here's the biblical clause, so I can maintain my Christian hat, my Christian card. And then, so that's feminism. Churches, the average church plays of feminism. The technology, porn in your pocket. The culture, porn, in the driveway, going for a jog. And then lastly, the courts. And so not only can she leave the marriage, but she can leave the marriage, and chances are she will get the kids, and the house, and this and that. And so I look at that, and that's why I'm slow. Yep. I'm just slower to answer because I just like the whole deck is rigged particularly against men. Yeah,
the church needs to be involved. Whether you would agree with Joel or you would say go broader, there are a lot of wives writing into like groups like Covenant Eyes. Like, what do I do? My husband has a habit and he just won't stop. Yeah. And so Kevin also brought up, so that was on grounds for divorce, leaving the home, so a type of separation.
Yes.
Right. Counsel the elders, but that would be a good step of this is serious. This is not just, I slipped up. No, this is serious. You need to leave the home and think twice who you want to be committed to. Are you following Christ or following yourself? Are you committed to this family or to your own pleasure?
Yeah, I've counseled that before, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even in cases of abuse, like physical abuse, there's a lot of Christians, like theologians, modern theologians. It's not a historic position, but modern theologians who want to add, this third clause, a third A. So like traditionally, like there's a lot of guys on the side of adultery only, and then there are a lot of guys throughout church history on the side of adultery and abandonment. But then there are modern guys who want to say adultery, abandonment, and abuse. And that's the same kind of scenario where in the case of abuse, we would never counsel anything that would physically endanger a wife and her children. So we would immediately counsel separation.
And you might even call the police.
And
help with it.
If it's a crime, we would also call the state, and because that falls under their jurisdiction, and that's biblically proper. So involving the state, so the church is now dealing with it as a discipline case, not yet risen to the point of excommunication, but we're telling it to the church. We're dealing with this. We've also informed the state, so it's been presented to the proper authorities there. If there's any crimes committed, then that man is subject to the penalties for those crimes. And we've counseled immediate separation. And it could even be that in the midst of separation, If he's particularly hostile, he's not repentant, then number one, ecclesiastically, we would excommunicate him from the church. And then legally, civilly, with the state, we would immediately counsel that wife to file a restraining order against him. And but my point is, we wouldn't just jump to, well, my husband has been abusive, as terrible as that is, and therefore the Bible lets me divorce him.
Right.
And like, I'm not aware of that verse.
Right.
And the Bible matters. So that's not, we're not saying we're going to endanger women and children. We would make sure they're safe. So to me, it's just a really, because the whole thrust, I like, Michael, that you brought in the, the larger context. The whole thrust of that text is to say, quit turning your wives away, right? Quit divorcing lightly.
Right.
I tell you, like, Moses said, offer a certificate of divorce, but I tell you, like, in the beginning, it was not so.
Right.
And so he's saying this is not God's heart for marriage, and it's a really, really big deal to end the covenant of marriage apart from anything but death, and so then he's putting very strong guardrails. He says there's only one reason. Jesus only gives one reason. Now you can argue that there's a second if you look at the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, but Jesus only gives one reason, and it is adultery, and then later uses the word porneia, which is broader. But how that gets defined and how that gets applied, I think I personally could not apply it to. He did it once, he repented, he confessed, and it's still permissible to divorce. Whereas if it's full blown adultery, even in that scenario, we would never counsel divorce. We'd say, please forgive and reconcile. But she could divorce if it was even one time, not caught, confessed, repented, all those things, if it was adultery.
And to be clear from the beginning, and I said it then,
was
I'm not ever implying a single use time. I'm talking
Yeah,
a
yeah,
literal
I know.
addict who refuses to give it up. That
Totally.
I would think, my interpretation is, sounds like we disagree. I would think that's caught in what Jesus is saying of sexual immorality being that.
No,
cause.
you made that very clear, and I completely agree. I'm just saying that, like, that would be to me, that's the categorical distinction, is that you're saying no way would I counsel divorce with a one-off offense. What I'm saying though is over here, a one-off offense may not merit the counseling of divorce, but the permissibility is there.
Yep.
Whereas you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you, not only would you not counsel it as the ideal, but you wouldn't even allow for it as a permissibility.
Nope.
If it was one-time porneia.
Nope. Right. And even if it was repentant, practically, and again, if like repentant got to the point where like you have to get rid of your phone, like, okay, I'm willing to do it, and they somehow find it on a friend's phone, like, but even there, no, I want to be done with this, I want to be through with it. Okay, you need to cut that friend off now, like, so as long as they're even stepping in that, I don't think you're talking about, because that idea with porneia is a lifestyle. That's some of the applications of it. So like at that point, he's saying, this could be defining of me as a lifestyle, but I'm fighting by God's grace. I'm attempting to put sin to death. I have accountability partners. The church is rallying around me. I don't want to be defined by this.
I appreciate that. So you're saying like adultery is an act. Porneia is a life.
A sexually immoral life. So it's not just immoral like he's drinking or partying or drugs.
It's not just an
sexually
action,
immoral.
but it's a way of life. Whereas adultery actually is just an action. It could also be a way of life, but it also can just simply be an action.
And because the covenant, the two shall become one. In marriage, the act is the two becoming one. In adultery, same thing with death, is it breaks the two apart. That a man then binds to another woman, or a woman goes and breaks that bond and binds to another man. But through sexual immorality, I think as Jesus is teaching, whether that literally be only the act of adultery, is that so broken by sexual immorality, by wickedness, by perversion, that nothing exists of it anymore. So he's saying recognizing it in divorce is the final formal step for something that's already broken apart. A man commits adultery, sleeps with another woman. Divorce is simply recognizing that he already broke what was broken months prior.
It still runs into the at what point question. Right.
And the Bible neglects often, even with church discipline for other things, it neglects to give us a list.
Yeah, it does.
Like we're talking about not having provided for 8 months and unemployment ran out 2 months ago. It always says wisdom over, let me give you the exact specifications for you to get Talmudic with it.
Right. That's that. And that honestly,
but that's how it is.
I appreciate you saying that, because that is kind of the heart of the difference is like trying to predict every single scenario that could ever happen, to where like, there's so many rules and regulations that you're choked versus the Bible. It's not that it doesn't offer anything that's tangible and concrete, but the heart of it is the spirit of the law.
We'll check out with Steve Lawson, and I'm not going to give a ton of details, but I think he technically maintained we didn't literally do the full and final act of consummation. And so technically, did he commit adultery? But you would be able to say, no, you were sexually immoral with, even if you didn't literally technically do this, you did X and Y and Z with someone who is not your wife, and you broke the covenant of marriage consciously and unrepentantly.
And for 5 years.
You don't get out of it because, well, technically, I actually...
But I think combined with that, it's also the fact that it was ongoing. It was 5 years, and he got caught.
Yep.
Steve Lawson did not confess.
Yeah.
And it was questionable whether or not he was even repentant at first.
Right.
For a while there.
For a while, yeah. And so, so no, I'm with you. Like you know, so let's say it was a one-off in that scenario, and he's like, well, technically, I didn't, X, Y, and Z, but we were, we were unclothed together and touching each other and those kind. Then, like we would say, yeah, we think that's adultery.
Yep. Right. Because that is a human inclination, is to get out of it and be like, well, actually, like, no, you don't understand. I didn't do this, the technical letter of the law versus this.
Right. Yeah. Bottom line is, I think, we've answered the question, but bottom line here at the end is, it does, like, it's inescapable. Like, I remember, having more of a bent towards biblicism, right? I mean, that sounds great, right? Biblicism. How's that? Like, that's the best doctrine in the world. You know? And so, but like, and wouldn't have even used the word. I wasn't even familiar necessarily with what that was, but I recognize now, like looking back, like, yeah, there were seasons of my life where I was a biblicist. But the problem with biblicism is that the Bible doesn't work that way. The Bible is not biblicist. What I mean by that is the Bible does not offer to us exact prescriptions for every scenario possibly imaginable under the sun to where we could just follow the formula. The Bible gives us principles, and then what it requires is prudence.
Right.
It absolutely requires prudence. And I understand that, like, yes, we don't want to rest on the wisdom of man, right? So we have concerns, and rightfully so, towards man's reason versus God's wisdom. But God's wisdom, in order to apply it properly, it requires regenerate man's reason. It does. That's inescapable. You will never, whether it's politics or whether it's church life or whether it's family or whether it's personal virtue and piety and holiness at every single level, the Bible is not a formula. It requires prudence and wisdom, and hopefully prudence and wisdom from a regenerate, born-again person who has a new nature and who is being conformed more and more into the image of Christ and has the mind of Christ and is thinking in godly ways. But there's no escaping that. If you're looking to escape that because you like, well, but man is bad and totally depraved, and like, yeah, but we're talking about Christians in this case. But if you're still like, well, yeah, but Christians still sin. Yes and amen, that's true. But if you're trying to find some kind of system, religious system, to avoid any element of man's wisdom because you know that there's the presence of sin, then may I direct you to Islam. May I direct you to Judaism. But the Bible actually is going to frustrate you. All right, that's it for today.
We had one last super chat from J-Dog. J-Dog, thank you, $2. I actually don't know the answer to this question. Did you guys receive the Deport Feminism stickers?
We did. I have them over here. Nathan, you want to bring me one real quick?
Oh my goodness.
That doesn't work. All right, here we go.
Hold it close to your face.
Deport Feminism. Nathan's going to zoom in real quick.
It needs to be by your face.
I like this.
Are these available, J-Dog, for people to buy?
Deport Feminism. See if he may have already signed off, but we'll give him 5 seconds. Are they available for people to purchase? Yeah, just leave a comment. So J-Dog, if you watch this later on, we gave you a shout out. And if you want to leave a link, we won't treat it as spam. We'll leave it up in the comment section. If you want to leave a link where people can purchase that. We would like to deport feminism. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys on Monday.